Well, you had better hold on to your hat, buckle up for safety, my friends. I want to speak to the issue of sowing and reaping, not in material things necessarily, but that which is behind the scenes in the invisible world. Yes, there is a sowing into that which is spiritual, and also what is natural, what is physical, and what is invisible. The scripture says in Galatians chapter 6, verse 8, "For he that soweth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption, but he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting." Now, that's a whole 9 yards of teaching on that one verse. But I want to deal with something that should interest everyone, whether the person is spiritual or whether the person is just a natural person, not even born again. Whether a person is interested in politics or government or anything or anyone. Sowing is something that everyone does. And where we sow determines what it is that we reap. Now, let me get political on you just for a moment. Because, in fact, we live in what is called a republic. And I hear so many people say we're in a democracy. Well, yes, things work democratically, supposedly. But the fact is, we're in a republic. We're not in a pure democracy. We're in a representative form of government, which is run by rule of law, not by the king or the emperor, but rule of law. So what we do, we empower people, that is, elect, or we sow into. Got it? We sow into people the ability or the power to make laws, make decisions. But whoever is doing the sowing or empowering of others will reap the results of where and who was sown into. Got it. All right. Well, the United States of America is undergoing a transformation, a change, if you please, that is horrific. The government, education, moral society, everything is going through a catastrophic, apocalyptic change. And it's because of who and what we have been sowing into. Don't want to get off on a hobby horse, but just to give you an example, we have been sowing into tolerance, tolerating any and everything under the guise of free will, under the guise of liberty, whatever. We have been sowing into ground that we're reaping results that we don't want. When you vote for a person in government, you are actually sowing into that person's personality, that person's auras, idiosyncrasies, or whatever it may be of that person. You're sowing into that individual. Now, I try to, as best I can, inform people that when you vote for an individual, you should be not so much as voting for the person in terms of who that person is naturally. Because all flesh is grass and will burn in the oven, and all flesh is a mess. You should be voting on principles that a person practices, because a person is constituted by what he or she practices. You're getting the picture now. Give you, for instance, that we all can see into clearly, that when a person voted for, let's say, President Barack Hussein Obama, okay? He is, at this particular telecast, the President of the United States. But the majority of the people voted for him not because of his principles that he practiced. They didn't vote for him because of the established personality that he has become, because most folk don't even know what his personality was. He hadn't been vetted. His past is secret. But most of the people, when I say most, I mean 51% and above, voted for him because of his ethnicity, his race, because they considered him to be black. And that was the biggest mistake that a person can make on this side of time. And I'll tell you why. You can sow to flesh that has no relevance and reap little consequence. Because if a person is not that important, then what you get out of that investment, it's not going to be all that important either. But when you invest so into and empower someone who would be in the Oval Office of the United States of America, you have sown into a particular position. You have sown into a particular status that affect the whole world. Oh, we're getting it now. If you sow into a person's ethnicity, regardless to the principle, you're going to get what's in that ethnicity regardless to the person or the personality of that individual. Because ethnicity goes all the way back to Adam, by the way, who fell into sin and brought sin into the world, and death by sin, and death was passed upon all men because all through Adam have sinned. Okay? So you have not an evolution, but a degeneration of humanity. And men are not getting better. Paul said men would wax or get worse and worse. So when you sow into someone whose flesh is considered to be black, which it's really not, it's a mixture, you have now coming the reaping process. And the scripture says, when you sow to your flesh, like people who say they are black, and so they sowed into who they consider to be black. Friends, black folks' flesh is a mess. White folks' flesh is a mess. Olive flesh is a mess. All flesh is a mess. And this is why America is falling into moral decay at a rate that is absolutely unthinkable. Absolute unthinkable flesh mess. And the person sown into may not even have a clue as to what to do. He is behind the cue. He may know what is right, but in him is a fight, and he doesn't know what to do to overcome the fight. He doesn't understand that someone has invested and empowered his flesh. Now corruption is coming. Now, if you check out that word corruption in the Greek language, oh, it's horrific. You talk about putrefying, rotten, smelly, odorous. We're getting out of the man who didn't even plan for the things that are coming forth now to come forth. He doesn't have a choice. There's no way to stop it. And the only way that things can change is that people are no longer sowing into the flesh. So again, you may take issue with what I'm saying, but please hear what I'm saying before you take issue, and then take issue. I don't mind. If people are sowing into my flesh, if I don't have a revelation of the new creation and I have a renewed mind and a transformed soul and a new articulation to get different types of manifestation, someone is going to draw out of me the mess that's in the flesh. So think about it. We've sown, and I say we, I'm talking about in general, sown to the flesh. And America is getting a big mess. The worst thing that ever happened to America is to vote for a president because of his flesh. That's a mess, my friend. Think about it. God bless.